segment.
All right, let's get into the stud muffins.
This week's Fantasy Stud Muffins.
You notice I let mine grow out a little bit more? It's a little bit,
And I
a little bit
appreciate
thicker.
it. I appreciate
A little Christmassier.
A little bit more Christmassy.
Yeah.
Yes. I've got the Christmas lights up this weekend, by the way.
Woo.
Yeah. I even put some on the tree.
Wow.
Like we're upgrading here.
Fancy.
All right. Quarterbacks. Russell Wilson.
Oh, my.
21 for 274, 3 touchdowns, 9 for 51, and a touchdown on the ground. Absolutely looked like he was toying with the defense, a very good defense. And so here to stay, and now has the Ravens next week. And what Russell Wilson's been doing is getting it done in the pocket. That's been what's made the fantasy jump.
I'll tell you what.
He's always had the baseline of running, but now he's passing the ball mostly to Doug Baldwin.
The problem for Russell Wilson was that Jimmy Graham character.
Yeah, get him out of here.
But, I mean, that's a funny correlation. Of course, that is not serious. People.
Yeah. Well, Russell Wilson's playing very well. That team is playing very well. So you can start Russell Wilson very, very confidently moving forward. Do we need to say anything else about Mr. Cam Newton?
Cameron Newton? Nope, not at all. He's a beast. You start him every week.
Cam Newton had a monster week, 5 touchdowns. Marcus Mariota had a monster game on the ground, including an 87-yard run, 20 for 268 in the air, 3 touchdowns, 9 for 112 on the ground. Takes on the Jets in New York next week. Temper the expectations, but Mariota is getting it done. He has had 3 of these huge games this year. What is the potential for Mr. Mariota to kind of...
I mean, the Jets' defense they are not what they were to start the year, but I don't know. Can you really trust the rookie in this situation where the Jets are playing for these? It's a big game. They're playing for the playoffs.
Yep.
At home, I don't know. We've seen the potential is there for the monster games, but for all the monster games, he also gives you sub double-digit games. So.
All right, other big games. Blake Bortles, first 5 touchdown game for Mr. Bortles. Tyrod Taylor, Tom Brady, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Big Ben. Which of these guys is worthy of a fantasy discussion? Fitzpatrick having another great game. He got the game ball for his comeback. That was a 20-10 game. It looked like that game was all but over. Brandon Marshall, man. Brandon Marshall and Ryan Fitzpatrick are a combo.
Brandon Marshall now has, I believe, 1,000 yards receiving for 4 different franchises.
First
ever
receiver in history.
Wow.
Yeah.
He must be okay at the wide receiver position.
Yeah. For Ryan Fitzpatrick, what we've always talked about is he's a great fantasy quarterback to start the year, but when will winter Ryan Fitzpatrick show up? And we know that winter is coming, but winter is here, and he has continued to have his high-powered passing attack. At this point, I feel comfortable starting him, especially against the Titans.
Yeah, me too.
That's really the question. Week 1 of the playoffs, potentially against the Titans, but at home.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
So would you rather play him, or would you rather play Tyrod Taylor at Philadelphia after that good big win from Philly?
I think I would rather start Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think
safer.
he's safer. Tyrod Taylor probably has the higher ceiling.
Okay. All right. And then Big Ben did what Big Ben does. It didn't look that way to start the game. In fact, when the way the game began, I was going, "Oh no, we said start Big Ben over Brady." In a lot of situations, he ends up with 364 and 4, and the weapons just eventually catch up to the defense. It seems like you cannot stop Antonio Brown and Martavis Bryant. Wheaton scored another touchdown.
I had a dream last night that Martavis Bryant scored like 6 touchdowns. So
you had the dream after the game?
Yes. So I mean,
okay,
he's so good. He's some of his. I mean, you've said this before, Andy, but like Randy Moss, he's the only guy that I feel like sometimes you see him streaking down the sideline, and he's just 2 yards from the defender. He catches it in his own little planet and runs away.
Yeah, it's just really hard to stop speed every snap of the entire game, and he just runs fly pattern. So,
and how about Blaine Gabbert?
Is he in the stud muffins?
He's got to be in there, man.
Why? 1 touchdown pass?
He had 75 yards on the ground.
I contend that he should not be.
No.
1 touch and 75 yards and a touchdown on the ground, my man.
Yeah.
I know.
That's
in our scoring format, 33 points.
Okay.
That's called a big game.
All right.
Yeah, Blaine Gabbert
took overtime, but all right.
It did.
You get there, you get there.
He finished as the 10th quarterback in standard
All
scoring.
right.
So
All right.
you
He
know.
finished as a 1. I wouldn't start him.
I agree.
He's
I
got
agree.
Cleveland next week.
I still wouldn't.
Huh.
Start him.
Yeah, I maybe deep
In
leagues.
twos.
Yeah,
Two
two quarterback
quarterback.
league.
All right, wide receivers that blew up. We don't need to talk about that top guy. No, I had to face the wide receiving core that is Allen Robinson.
The target monster.
Oh, I thought there was a raptor.
It was very similar. Allen Robinson's having a humongous year, guys.
Yes.
Humongous. 10 for 153 and 3 touchdowns yesterday. Well, I guess we know that he will get his regardless of Allen Hurns' availability.
Yeah, he's a stud, and you just need to treat him like he was.
65 for almost 1,100 yards and 11 touchdowns on the year so far for Allen Robinson.
Yeah, and we're in week 13. That puts Allen Robinson year to date. He is the number 4 wide receiver in the National Football League fantasy standard scoring.
Yeah, that's just an impressive, incredible year. A lot of it has to do with his second year mixed with Bortles and his maturity and the willingness for that offense to finally wing it a little bit, put it in the air, let these guys make tough catches. It seems like Allen Robinson cannot be guarded on a slant pattern. I don't know how many of those 11 have been slants into the end zone.
Well, and the thing that makes him so valuable in the end zone is that he is so great at contested catches. When you put it up for him and another guy in kind of one of those jump balls, he normally comes down with it, very similar to Des Bryant, who we said before the year was his closest statistical counterpart. So
there were a lot of big wide receivers that had games, and they don't really have question marks around them. You're starting them in the playoffs. That's Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham Jr., Brandon Marshall. By the way, he caught 12 balls on 13 targets, so a really efficient game for Brandon Marshall. A.J. Green had another huge game.
Hey, he's back, A.J. Green.
Yeah, people can't doubt A.J. Green.
Well,
They can't. They can't.
I understand that you cannot doubt Green, but he's been a little disappointing.
But let's
last
talk
couple weeks.
about some of the guys. I'm going to ask you about them. They had big weeks again, or big weeks that aren't necessarily started or kind of question mark guys. So let's start with Jeremy Maclin. Jeremy Maclin was 9 for 95, 2 touchdowns. He had, I believe, a 1-yard run and like a 1-yard pass, something to that extent. What is the thought on Jeremy Maclin moving forward? Because he's had a couple great games. We talked about the fact some of his lower games he was matched up with Denver in one of them, and then the other game was a blowout because of the defense. So do you guys buy into Maclin moving forward, or is he still going to give you a dud?
I buy into Jeremy Maclin now because we looked back at the matches, and I even gave him a semi-apology last week for mentally thinking he had been bad, but his matchups really played against him, and like you said, that game where they blew him out, well, his matchups going forward are San Diego, Baltimore, Cleveland, and Oakland. So those are all matchups where I don't expect him to be getting 3 for 48.
How many games does he have left?
Well, that's 4.
He went
Obviously,
through week 17.
Week 17 is playoffs for some.
Right. He has to only accumulate 133 yards in those 4 games to hit 1,000 yards and get you wet, Jason.
Yeah,
because we made that bet.
Well, good. I'm happy for him. Great, Jeremy. I'm not wishing ill on you or any
So you're
ankle
starting
injuries.
Maclin.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm starting Maclin with confidence.
How about Doug Baldwin? Because now Doug Baldwin has 3 straight weeks
Yeah, he
of
is
monster games.
He is on fire with 5 for 94 and 2 touchdowns. The problem with Baldwin is still the targets. He had 7 targets. That's 7 targets. That's not the volume you expect from a guy who's going to have a monster week. He's been highly efficient, but can you trust him with that? I
guess you're making the point with your efficiency comment, but let me give you some perspective. On the year, Allen Robinson has 65 catches, okay, for that 1080 and 11.
Right.
On the year, Doug Baldwin has 55 catches and 8 touchdowns and almost 800 yards. So no, he's not a superstar, but he should be, I think, very firmly in the wide receiver 2-3 category.
Oh yeah,
and
they're
you're
absolutely
to throw him out there, right?
One of the reasons that you can get that out of Doug Baldwin, very similar to what we're seeing with Ted Ginn Jr. You have a team that runs, whether it's through the quarterback or the running back, and then, or even wide receivers at times. And then in Carolina's case, they run, take a deep shot. Run, take a deep shot. Well, Seattle hasn't been doing that for the first half of the year, but we've seen that's what's opening up here in Seattle lately over these last few games is that they're throwing the ball a little bit deeper. So while, he might only get 5 catches, Ted Ginn, I feel completely confident starting Ted Ginn, and he's probably not going to get more than 5 receptions in a game on a general week. But it's still going to be.
And Ted Ginn drops a 70-yard touchdown every single game.
Goodness, 2 of them last game.
Yeah, 2 of them, and he ended up with 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He got 2 touchdowns, 5 for 80 and 2 touchdowns. He's in our stud muffin section, but he dropped 2 of them. So when you say starting, though, give people some context because they don't. I mean, what does that even mean? Starting him over who? Starting him where?
I think it's going to be a little bit matchup dependent. You're going to. I don't see going up against a top flight defense and wanting to start these guys, but I would start them as a wide receiver 2, which means on most rosters
you would start Ted Ginn as a wide receiver 2 now.
Ted Ginn, I would start as a wide receiver 2 in a good matchup. Absolutely.
Well, we know his matchups moving forward. So next
Let's
week,
take a look.
Atlanta
next week is Atlanta. 2 weeks after that is Atlanta. I just don't remember the game in between.
I think the game in between is New Orleans.
Really?
No, it's New York. It's the
Giants,
which is like New Orleans light.
So all 3 of those matchups could be argued as at least mid-tier to good.
Yeah, mid-tier to
So are
good.
you really?
I would
your
say
playoffs are on the line. You're throwing Ted Ginn out there.
I would throw Ted Ginn as a wide receiver 3 against Atlanta and a wide receiver 2 against the New York Giants. That's how I see it.
All right.
I mean, if you look at what he's done this year and how many touchdowns he accumulates, his yards per catch, I think he's a safe option right now.
Safe? Oh my gosh! I think we just disagree.
Fair enough.
He had 5 touchdowns against New Orleans. He had no catches the week before. That's what I'm afraid of with Ted Ginn. 30 catches on the year. So that's where I'm concerned about Ted Ginn.
That's where it's a matchup. I mean, Dallas's defense has been great all year, and if you can't get that guy free in the deep, it's like a Deshaun Jackson. So maybe safe isn't the right word. That's why I think he is matchup dependent. But if you've got a defense where you can get behind them, which is I don't really see that much in Atlanta, which is why I say a wide receiver 3 there, because they don't really give up a lot of big plays to the wide receiver. They haven't all year, even despite implosion right now going on in Atlanta. Their defense has still not given up big plays to the wide receiver too much. So,
and here's the crazy thing about Ted Ginn, because we were talking about Doug Baldwin as well. Doug Baldwin on the year has 64 targets. Ted Ginn on the year 75 targets.
So
drops.
That has to do with a lot of deep passes.
Yeah. Deep passes and
to catch 35, and Baldwin has 55.
Let me ask you.
Yes.
Who would you rather start, Ted Ginn or Doug Baldwin?
Baldwin all day.
Okay, and you'd rather sign him as well?
Yep.
Are you in agreement there, Mike?
Yeah, I think so. The Dallas game is weird for Ted Ginn Jr. with no targets, but I mean when your defense does,
they ran the ball
the entirety of the lifting, then it makes sense that because Ginn is the deep guy.
I think if you need a home run, I think Jason's right on the money. I'm not saying sit down Ted Ginn in every circumstance. I just wouldn't call him safe. I don't think that's the word I would use. Dorial Green Beckham, 5 for 119 and a touchdown. This was indicative of what you see from wide receivers facing the Jacksonville Jaguars this year. So I don't know how much I read into it. Do you guys get a different feeling than I do that This was a good game? This is a good game.
Yep. It was turned into a
crazy game.
Really, really high scoring game. So somebody's got to score. So Green Beckham did.
All right, stud muffins at the running back position. Jason alluded to it earlier with the rookies and their contributions right now. Javorius Allen, T.J. Yeldon, David Johnson,
Thomas
who else?
Rawls.
Thomas Rawls, all had big weeks. I don't think any of those guys are getting sat down, but maybe we need to kind of assure David Johnson owners of the future. So somebody do that for us.
Well, Chris Johnson is out. He's going to be out the rest of the way for fantasy. And then you have Andre Ellington as really the only other guy to worry about coming back. If Andre Ellington is right now expected to miss this next week. So I think if that happens, you've got David Johnson taking another lion's share week. I believe he got 22 carries this week. So if that's the case, he is going to firmly establish himself as a leading running back. If he gets another 22 for 100 and a touchdown, how do you then have Andre Ellington come back hurt and say, hey, Andre's ahead of you. It's not going to happen.
I don't even think they approach it that way. I don't think they approach it like, oh, Ellington's going to come back and suddenly become the between the tackles running back. I think they want Ellington to, especially him coming off an injury. The whole reason he can't sustain being a between the tackles guy is because he gets hurt. He just comes back, and David Johnson is the Chris Johnson, and Ellington's the Ellington, just like he's always been. That's how I approach it too. And he was your start of the week, so a big week. It was funny because Arians said he'd have about 25 touches. I believe he had 24 touches. That's a great game, and the game was put away late, and Kerwin Williams even had a 35-yard touchdown run in the game.
Yep, and the thing you got to be careful for is, or not be careful, but just be wary is the fumble. He fumbled again, got bailed out because the Rams recovered it, and they had a foot out of bounds, so Cardinals kept possession. But David Johnson got a little bit of a benching after that.
Yeah, you can't do that. Certainly a playoff team trying to secure the potential home field. You can't fumble the ball. But all the rookies, they don't understand that for 3 or 4 years, apparently. All right, so Matt Forte, big bounce-back game for him. 21 for 84 and a touchdown, 5 for 39 through the air. We like Matt Forte in the playoffs, the fantasy playoffs.
Yep.
Okay. James White had a game of necessity is what I'm going to choose to call it. 2 for 4 on the ground. He's not getting the ball between the tackles, but 10 catches, 115 yards, and a touchdown.
He went full Deion Lewis roll.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
So the question is, does he stay there?
No. I would say no.
Yeah, I would say that just is
because he had a good game 2 games ago, then he didn't do anything last week, and then he had a big game this week. It's going to be, the potential's there. The potential's there if Gronkowski's out. Yeah.
I would certainly pick him up, because he could.
Remember what you said about Devontae Adams?
He stinks.
Yeah. What do you say about Brandon LaFell?
He stinks. Goodness gracious! I had a Twitter poll asked to me of who stinks more, Brandon LaFell or Devontae Adams, and honestly, these guys are like somewhat mirror images of each other as far as in the brain. In the brain, I feel like these guys are the same. The same guy. They have Hall of Fame quarterbacks throwing them the ball that they cannot catch.
Quarterbacks that really need them to catch the ball because their weapons are weak right now.
Yeah, goodness gracious, catch the
in
ball.
The brain.
Danny Amendola, welcome to my side, fellas.
Oh, I've been on the Amendola side.
No, it was I've
been waiting for LaFell to catch a deep ball. They keep trying. It's been 900 different tries. He's caught none of them.
Well, and what's crazy, so on that Twitter question that I was asked, I said who stinks more was Devontae Adams, not Brandon LaFell. And the reason is because last year, Brandon LaFell finished as the number 18 wide receiver. We know he can. What in the world is going on? Why can't you catch the ball?
Yeah, I think that's what Brady was saying. Every time LaFell Amendola dropped a pass, Keyshawn Martin dropped passes, he was threading the needle and couldn't finish the job.
So, Tom Brady got so tired of Brandon LaFell that he said, screw this, I'm playing
catching.
Wide receiver. Danny Amendola, throw me the ball.
I'll show you how to catch.
That play was awesome. Unbelievable trick play, and Tom Brady gets a 36-yard reception.
There you go.
All right, we talked about it earlier. Jeremy Hill, 22 for 98 and a touchdown.
He's on fire.
Is he back? Is he back, Mike? Or could at any moment next week, Pittsburgh, very likely that he gets stuffed up quite a bit. Could he just be? It could be the Gio Bernard show against the Steelers.
It absolutely could be. So
yeah, the matchup makes me worried about the on fire continuing.
That's the worst part of this Jeremy Hill ascension is his playoff schedule. So Gio Bernard was used hardly at all.
I know.
Hardly at all in this last game. So and everything game flowed to Hill. Like we were talking about, could that happen against the Browns? And sure did. That it was the Jeremy Hill show, just running out the clock. But they still have to give him work. I think the team, the argument I've been going to all year of the Bengals knowing they have to get Jeremy Hill going if they want to win in the playoffs.
It's an interesting thing because this is where fantasy and reality seem to diverge, in my opinion. I don't think that the Bengals coaching staff looks at the game and sees 22 for 98 and a touchdown and Jeremy Hill's a superstar. I think they look at it the way it played out, which is we're playing Cleveland, we're up by 400 points, and we need to run the clock out. And so is it good to see those numbers? Yeah. Is it expected of him by the coaching staff? Probably against Cleveland. And so it's a matter of, can he do it against a good team, Pittsburgh, when they need it to win the division, to secure.
Right.
I mean, right now, the Patriots have dropped to 3rd in the AFC. This is a competition for the home field's advantage.
Frank Gore, this last game against Pittsburgh, ran well on them. You saw several plays where he busted a decent run, but then what happens is Pittsburgh's offense turns on fire, and you've got to go to the air. You've got to match him with that assault. So it's hard for that type of runner, for a Jeremy Hill type runner, to stay in the game because they need, you saw Frank Gore have a pretty good game because he got 3 in the air for 50 yards and a touchdown. That's where you kind of have to go, tit for tat with
Sure.
with
If
the
they're
Steelers.
coming back, it's going to be Gio.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. All right, we got to go through these real quick. Tight ends. Richard Rodgers, 8 for 146 and a touchdown. We talked about him. Is he kind of the top target on waivers, or are there some other guys?
If you need a tight end, I think you have to be looking at Richard Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers is looking at him every play.
Delaney Walker, Charles Clay, Scott Chandler, and Greg Olsen all had big weeks. Walker continues to just ho-hum, do what Walker does.
Yeah.
8 for 92 and a touchdown. Reliable as pie. Charles Clay, 4 for 66 and a touchdown. His touchdown was so wide open. Nobody covered him. They must be fantasy players.
He could have
and
just
knew that Charles Clay has been not used for weeks.
Tyrod Taylor could have punted the ball, and Clay could have just fair caught it.
You're right. He really, really could have. I don't think that would have been legal. Scott Chandler did get in the end zone, 4 for 61 and a touchdown.
Sure did.
It's still painfully obvious he's not Rob Gronkowski every route he runs, but he is useful because some of those other guys are not useful right now catching the ball. So Scott Chandler, I think, is fine with Gronk out. Do we agree?
Yeah. Absolutely. He's a serviceable guy.
Rodgers or Chandler?
Rodgers.
Chandler.
For me, I assume you can only say that when Gronk is out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So Rodgers, if you need a pickup, Rodgers can serve you through the playoffs. So whereas, how long are you going to be
think
starting?
Rob Gronkowski might be back for next week?
No.
Any hope that Rob?
I don't think
Rob
he will
comes
be.
back from a matchup against Mike.
I think there's a little hope. But
I think there is very little
I
hope.
want to believe.
And just real quick before we get into the other guys, I don't know if you saw the Brandon LaFell garbage can Vine was recirculating again yesterday.
Legitimately, if he caught that kind of inside slant pass at the end of the game on that drive, he probably gains 20, 25, 30 yards, and Gostkowski gets a shot at the end of the game to tie it.
To be fair, every receiver on the last drive took a turn dropping a ball. So
They did. It ended on 4 consecutive drops, I think, something to that extent.